Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's program. The program is tagged the Researchers Development Program, and this will be the second time we are organizing this program, an all-round development program for researchers, for personal development, visibility, and the first meeting was on LinkedIn optimization for researchers. That was a month ago. And today we'll be talking about effective communication on research ideas or findings. I am Dr. Iyasiri Oluwaseun-Sira, the host and the organizer of today's meeting. We have two invited speakers in our midst. The first speaker will be Dr. Deborah Thomson, and the second speaker is Mr. Bayo Moses. So today we are going to learn the different strategies by which researchers will be able to communicate their findings or their ideas, not only to the scientific community, but also to the public and to policymakers. This idea really dropped in my mind because as a researcher, I've been doing a lot of article publication, conference publications, but it got to a time when I needed some of my friends to actually look at my poster and vote for it. It was a poster competition then. And when one of my friends went through the poster, he was like, Seun, I don't understand this. So it was then I realized that the way we write scientifically, it's not only everybody that can understand it. I think we need to, bring science closer to the public so that the general public will be able to benefit from whatever we are doing. So I want to welcome all the participants to today's meeting. And I believe that at the end of the day, you're going to go home with a lot of ideas, a lot of tips, and this will definitely help to boost your ability and will help to boost your voice, and more people will know more about what you are doing. So before Dr. Deborah Thomson makes her presentation, she'll be talking to us on how to communicate science. I would like to take her biography. Dr. Deborah Thomson is the author of The Art of Science Communication and the chair of the World Veterinary Association's World Health Education subgroup. In addition, she founded an organization that inspires children and adults around the world to value the interconnection between humans, human health, and the health of the environment, plants, and animals. This is called the One Health lesson. She has served as the science policy advisor in the United States Congress and is also a clinical veterinarian and an award-winning public speaker. Her articles have been printed in multiple publications, including the Lancet Planetary Health. So join me in welcoming Dr. Deborah Thomson as she gives her presentation on how to communicate science.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Please, everybody, write in the chat box where you're calling in from, what country, what area of the country, what area of the world. And I also want to know, what is your thesis? What's the title of your thesis, of your PhD thesis or master's thesis? I would really love to know. Today, we will be speaking about how to communicate science based on several excerpts from my book called The Art of Science Communication. The subtitle is Sharing Knowledge with Students, the Public, and Policymakers. It's available on Amazon. Let's see, is somebody already put in the chat box? Somebody's calling in from Nigeria, welcome. Somebody from Pakistan, welcome. What I would like to know is, what's your thesis? Tell me, what is your specialty in Nigeria, in Pakistan, wherever you're calling in from? Great to see people introducing themselves in the chat box. Thank you all very much for that. I see somebody from Nigeria, animal behavior and welfare. Philip from Benin. Nice to see you, Philip. And I see another person from the United States, behavioral geneticist. Excellent. I'm calling in from the United States. I see somebody who is a geneticist and molecular pathologist, another person who's a veterinarian. Oh, cool. And then somebody's calling in from Mali. Another person's from South Africa, and specialty is project management. That's amazing. Happy to have you here. A thesis title for somebody, optimization of an aquaponic system. Very nice. Another person's a veterinarian. Another person's calling in from Ethiopia with a specialty in animal production. Another is specializing in environmental microbiology. Great. And then a grassland scientist. Thesis title. Okay, ready for this, everybody? Thesis title, analysis of eco-compensation policy effect and livestock production risks on herders. It goes on. Grazing behavior, an empirical study in Inner Mongolia, China. That's wonderful. Wonderful. Please, everybody, continue to introduce yourselves while we get started. Today, my talk is going to be divided into two parts. We're going to be covering really what's important for you, the researcher, when you're communicating science to students, to the public, and to policymakers. Now, the purpose of this book, The Art of Science Communication, is efficiently to communicate science in a practical and digestible way. Raise your virtual hand if you have seen the movie Don't Look Up. I don't know how popular it is in other areas of the world. Don't Look Up has Leonardo DiCaprio in it, a very famous actor here in the United States. And he and a lot of the other main characters are scientists. They're researchers, and they study astrophysics, and they see that there's a comet coming to Earth. And they keep telling everybody, they go on the news, they go on talk shows, they go to the president of the United States, and they say, there's a comet coming here, we need to act. And they don't deliver their message well. So can you imagine what happens at the end of the movie? I won't spoil anything, just watch it. But it's just a beautiful demonstration of what happens over and over and over again with researchers around the world. That's why I wrote this book, because I am a veterinarian. I'm in your world. I'm a scientist as well. When I was working in federal policy in the United States, I was constantly taking meetings with researchers from all different parts of science and engineering. And over and over and over again, they could not deliver their message in a clear manner. So my colleagues in policy turn to me and they say, Deb, can you translate this for us? I had to write the book. So the stories that contribute to the book come from my time in the classroom, because before being a veterinarian, I was teaching, my time in the clinic doing clinical medicine, my time public speaking at conferences with the general public, and my time in Congress in Capitol Hill, meaning the federal government in the United States. The underlying theme of the book, as well as this talk today, is One Health. Let's just say it simply. The concept of One Health is that connection between our health and the health of the environment, animals, and plants. Sick environment, sick people, sick crop supply, sick animals, sick people, right? It all is related. So the layout of this book, The Art of Science Communication, is what you can see on the screen here. What I've started is really what we're going to be discussing mainly today. Diving in, I'm going to be reading from this book a few different excerpts. And then after the book excerpts, after I'm done going through my presentation, please ask as many questions as you can, because you only have me for a limited time. So please take advantage of this time together. Okay, the intention of this book, The Art of Science Communication, I have here as, my intention for this book is to provide guidance for you, the scientist, to successfully deliver your message and inspire action from your audience, whether it is to prevent people from littering in your neighborhood, or convincing policymakers to increase funding for scientific research, particularly your research. With this book, it is no longer possible to use an excuse to say that there is insufficient science funding, because it is up to us to convey the importance of our message to the right people at the right time. That's the entire reason why I wrote this book. Now, a few notable quotes in this book. And let me just say, I self-published this book because several editors and publishers wanted to take this book, but they said, you need to divide this into 3 separate books. You see, how to speak with children, how to speak with the public, how to speak with policymakers. And I say, no, that's not the point of this book. If you want to go out and speak with influencers, policymakers in your own community, you must be able to already simply explain science to somebody as young as a 6-year-old student. Because if you can't explain to a 6-year-old, good luck explaining to a policymaker. So, first quote I would like to share with you is, a child is like a stem cell. Now pretend that you're in a classroom and you're teaching science to students. Imagine that a quiet child is sitting in the back of your classroom and is intently listening to you during your science guest appearance. She is silently processing the information. And there's a real chance that your words could influence her daily choices as well as her future career trajectory. A child is like a stem cell that can develop in many different ways. Children may become parents and grandparents and educate their offspring. Children may become teachers and educate their future students. Children may become scientists, politicians, technicians, engineers, clinicians, mathematicians, and more. Education is so powerful, it can affect generations. Living and learning go hand in hand. Another portion is a quote that can be summarized here. And can I ask for even more people at this point to write down your thesis statements, your thesis titles for your PhDs? To answer somebody's question, yes, it's available on Amazon. It's available online. My book is available online. So let's go over, what is your PhD thesis? I read one and it was many, many, many words long. Epidemiology of rabies at the bite-bat-human interface in southwestern Nigeria. Excellent, excellent. Any others want to share? Analysis of interferon regulatory factor 5 gene and its association with productive and adaptive traits in Nigerian indigenous chickens. How on earth are you going to explain that to a 6-year-old, right? From there, how are you going to explain that to somebody who wants to fund your research who's not a scientist? In this book, it goes, some of the best ways to communicate your thoughts in a clear and concise manner are to speak with children who tend to have short attention spans and participate in regular Toastmasters International meetings. I explain Toastmasters later on in the book. The more time you spend speaking in classrooms and with the general public and policymakers, your comfort level and confidence will significantly increase. Raise your virtual hand if you've heard of Toastmasters. It's available in over 111 countries, last I saw, definitely in Nigeria. I know that for sure because some of the interns with One Health Lessons are part of Toastmasters clubs there. Available online and in person. But Toastmasters, great. I see a few hands there. Excellent. Toastmasters is advertised as a public speaking club. It's really a communication club. It teaches you how to understand your audience. It teaches you how to provide feedback in a way that is beneficial to both the person receiving the feedback and everybody else listening. It's a way so that you can communicate your thoughts clearly. And most importantly, if you find a club that's for the public, instead of like a private company Toastmasters club, then you are probably going to be one of very few scientists in the group. And you're going to get real feedback, real honest feedback with if the audience understands what you're saying or not. And it's done in a safe environment. So I do recommend joining a Toastmasters club. Okay, enough about speaking with children at this point. Let's talk about the public. Now, the goal here is to have somebody say, "That's right." As long as you say, "That's right," I'll read this section. This section is step number 3 in the 4 steps to change the minds of others. I'll read just a small portion of step 3, which is ultimately address the costs of not changing. Once empathy and trust are established, advance to this step. The goal is to cajole the listener to say, "That's right," at least once. Focus on the possible lost opportunities with inaction during this step. Who here, raise your virtual hand if you've taken any business courses or negotiation courses or debate courses? I'd be surprised with this audience of researchers if many have done any of those. But guess what? If you want to get ahead in today's world, you need to acquire certain skills to pitch your ideas in the right way to the right people at the right time. If you have your audience say "that's right," as if they agree with you, you create more buy-in and more opportunity to expand the conversation. Okay, now this is the longest excerpt that I'm going to be reading. It's a few pages, but I felt like this is probably one of the most important parts to discuss and highlight with this group, this particular audience of researchers. It's speaking with the public about a controversial topic. There are 3 rules to remember when speaking with the public about a controversial topic. Be honest, education is power, and lead the conversation. Rule number 1, be honest. Science is always changing with new discoveries. Sometimes science reverts backward because a recent discovery disproves a past and generally accepted theory. The general public does not understand that this is the way science works. That's really important to remember. Take medicine, for example. Clinicians like physicians, veterinarians, dentists read many journals discussing new therapeutics, new standards of care, and new discoveries, and then translate this hard science into something applicable to their patients. Clinicians, just like researchers, are only human. We are only human. However, a person sick in a hospital does not want to think of their physician as a human who is capable of making a mistake. Patients trust physicians with their lives. There's a lot at stake in making a mistake. Sometimes, however, a clinician does not know why the patient, person or animal, is sick. Sometimes it is due to ignorance or inexperience of the clinician, but other times it is due to the fact that this is a new disease. The clinician might wonder, did the pathogen just mutate from the local animal population, or is it an atypical presentation of a known disease? Was it transmitted to the person by a new tick in the area or another insect? Did the person drink water contaminated by an unknown toxin? Maybe a byproduct of another chemical previously thought to be harmless in the environment. When clinicians do not know the answer to why somebody is sick, it is okay to say, "I don't know." But be sure to follow this up with, "But I will consult with a colleague or specialist to give you the best possible chance of feeling better. So that's rule number 1, be honest. Rule number 2, education is power. A controversial topic such as climate change is only controversial because of the lack of niche knowledge and trust. The lack of knowledge, or ignorance, some people would call it, it's not stupidity. Ignorance is not stupidity. Remember, everybody must be treated with respect and be understood in order to deliver science in the most meaningful way. I have spoken with people who do not believe in climate change. Some of these people work in the United States federal government. In particular, these people recognize, and this might be interesting for you all, that the planet is changing, but they do not believe the changing climate is due to human involvement. I'm not surprised by this belief. After all, it is much less stressful to believe the changes occurring to our environment were inevitable and have nothing to do with people's actions. Guilt is an uncomfortable emotion that people tend to avoid. Now, how could we change the minds of climate change deniers? Can we start talking about carbon-13 and carbon-14? Now, that's something I discussed earlier in the book. Remember, the general public does not commonly understand isotopes. Their last chemistry class was probably back in secondary school, and even then they probably didn't even like the subject very much. However, the general public does know about carbon dioxide, and that more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is problematic because it warms the planet. They get it. They may know this because it has been repeated over and over again on television and in the news. They may not understand it, but they tend to accept it as fact due to repetition. What the general public doesn't recognize is the reason why scientists say climate change is being exacerbated by human activity. The public typically does not know that scientists can determine the original source of the carbon that is in the carbon dioxide molecules floating up in the atmosphere. However, they do know that we inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. Therefore, it is not necessary to explain to the public exactly what isotopes are. The important point is to explain that there are different versions of carbon, and those versions come with their own assigned numbers. Through years of research, scientists know that carbon-13 comes from fossil fuels and carbon-14 comes from living plants. When sampling carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we have discovered that there's a large percentage of carbon-13 up there. Therefore, fossil fuels are worsening the thickening atmosphere. Once the general public understands that, they may start to make more eco-friendly decisions. Remember, trust in science is never guaranteed. We, as scientists, need to work to make the scientific process and its discoveries as accessible as possible. We do that by using our communication skills. So rule number 1, be honest. Rule number 2, education is power. Rule number 3, last rule here. Lead a conversation. Once you explain a concept like climate change with the public audience, then you should welcome a conversation. Encourage them to ask questions. Show empathy while they ask these questions. Understand that their questions will often come from a place of unfamiliarity with the subject and not from malice. Everybody is entitled to respect. Show that you are actively listening and try to determine the reasons behind their comments. I often say phrases like, I can see why people think that. I once thought that too, but this is what I was taught since. Now notice how I said how I was taught instead of saying I learned. By saying you were taught, others see you as more relatable because you were once a student. After recognizing their thoughts and comments, you can then describe up to 2 scientific climate-related discoveries that support your scientifically sound statements but avoid overwhelming your audience with facts. Remember, you can have too much of a good thing. If you are patient enough, you will see the crowd shift in your favor as long as they feel recognized and understood. This is an occasion for you, the scientist, to listen and learn as much as your audience. Each conversation is a learning opportunity to improve your own science communication skills. Okay, enough of me reading for the bit. So the last part of the book is really how to communicate with policymakers. I don't know about you, but before I started working with policymakers and being staff for one of the most influential policymakers in the country, I was quite intimidated. And I thought that that was a whole different world that I would not be welcome in, and I would not be able to have a conversation with. You know, you look through or you look at a building that's with the federal government or wherever you are, and you must think, what on earth is going on in there? What do they know? Why are they doing what they're doing, right? Let's discuss what it's like to be coming from the other side. And this is just a snippet. This is from chapter 7, Life on the Other Side of the Boardroom Table. Okay, the first paragraph in that chapter. So far, you have heard that it is important to visualize the conversation from your target audience's perspective. With this chapter and its corresponding material in the appendix, I wanted to show you what life really is like for staff of a policymaker, and for you to see how bills and policy actually get made. In this chapter, I will show you law text and how law text can be translated into attractive everyday speech. And you can apply this for your own research into attractive everyday speech. Now that you know how to translate science into layman's terms, it is time to look across the boardroom table and pretend to live the life of a Senate staffer. After all, how else can you effectively communicate with your target audience if you can't imagine being in their position? So this book gives you insight of how life is like to live in the policy world. Again, the book is called The Art of Science Communication, Sharing Knowledge with Students, the Public, and Policymakers. It's available on Amazon. It's available digitally and in paperback. And I also made this quite short on purpose. I made this quite short because I want this to fit into a purse, a backpack, a briefcase. I talk about the importance of brevity, something that scientists are not very good at. But it would be pretty foolish of me to have a book that's over 100 pages if I talk about the importance of brevity, right? The last page here is page 80. It's all in here. Okay, now let's talk about something that you can apply for today, gain skills in science communication, and you can start now. One Health Lessons. One Health Lessons is a nonprofit that I created that inspires children and adults around the world to value One Health, that interconnection between our health and the health of the environment, animals, and plants. The vision of One Health Lessons is to change societies to create a more sustainable planet. We have a Train the Trainer program. This is open to anybody who's at least 18 years old. These individuals are volunteers. You are not paid for this. These people are volunteers. They want to improve their science communication skills, and they want to give back to their community. And they want to serve as science role models for students, young students in their communities. We already talked about the benefit for you in speaking with children, especially about science. So there are a few steps in this Train the Trainer program known as the Certified Lesson Leaders program. Step 1, attend a 1-hour online orientation session where you learn how to speak with a 6-year-old versus a 16-year-old versus a 60-year-old. Step 2, watch an entire One Health lesson recorded on our YouTube channel. And if you're not already subscribed, do please subscribe to our YouTube channel, One Health Lessons. And then after you watch this lesson, then you take a quiz, and you have to pass this quiz at 100%. From there, you observe a live lesson, see what it's really like to speak with a group of 30 different 8-year-olds, and then teach your own lesson. But we actually provide the lesson material for you to teach. At that point, you become a certified lesson leader. And this is after the first year running the program, where the different certified lesson leaders were located. But it doesn't stop there. For the people who are truly committed to make a difference in their own communities, we bring these lessons home. And you teach at least 5 times in your own first language, in your own community. And then you become a One Health Lessons ambassador. At that step, you teach others how to teach these lessons, those first 4 steps that I discussed. The orientation session, the quiz that's associated with the video, observing a live lesson, and then teaching a live lesson. This is a story of Charles. At the time of this story, Charles was a veterinary student in Nigeria, and he became the 2021 One Health Lessons Ambassador of the Year. This is what got him to have that incredible designation. He took it upon himself to gather 20 of his friends, teach them how to teach these lessons, and they go out into classrooms. And over a course of 2 weeks, over 20 individuals, 20 university students taught over 2,000 children in just 2 weeks. And it's all because of Charles. It's all because he was realizing that as many people as possible in his community needed to know about One Health, needed to appreciate that disrespecting the environment plays a role on our health, on our parents' health, on our siblings' health. Now, this 1-minute video just highlights, after the first year of loan, where One Health Lessons has reached. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions. And Starla, if you don't mind putting in the chat box, or maybe I might have the link still saved. Here we are. That is the Google form to sign up for the Lesson Leaders Program if you want to improve your science communication skills and give back to your community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Deborah, for the wonderful presentation. And I can see that from your book, you actually brought in 3 different groups of people: the children, the public, and the policymakers. These are 3 diverse group of people that you need to communicate to in different ways. So I would like to ask you this: what are those skills that is really relevant for one to be able to pitch our idea to this different category of people?
Active listening. That is by far the most important skill. Because ultimately, if you don't understand your audience, you don't understand what you need to say and how you're going to say it. So the very first thing to do is listen. Close your mouth and listen. Once they are done saying their piece, then start speaking. But active listening is by far the most important. Thanks for the question.
That's great. So a good listener would be a good teacher. So there is a question from Dr. Samuel Durosharo. He wants to know, how do you convince editors and reviewers who don't believe in simplicity of science?
Excellent question.
How do you
Yeah,
that
excellent. Yeah. So again, how do you convince editors and reviewers who don't believe in simplicity of science? When speaking with those editors or reviewers, I would use a story. I would use a story to say, I can't believe that a 6-year-old knows what mRNA vaccines are about, but they know because I taught them with One Health lessons. Use a story, and then they'll be shocked, and then they might be able to listen a little bit easier.
Well, thank you so much. So storytelling goes a lot into science communication as well. And now I have this question. There is, how will I call this? What is called a dumb professor. I don't know if you've heard about that. It's a well-knowledgeable person who is not able to communicate whatever he has in himself to the student or to his target audience. How, if someone discovers that you have such kind of issue, how can you, what can you do to make sure that you are able to communicate that knowledge to people?
So to make sure I understand the question, are you saying if you figure out that you are the person having communication issues?
Yes.
Or, okay, not that you're in a classroom with somebody teaching. Okay. By far, the best thing to do before you go to sleep tonight is to enroll in a Toastmasters group. That allows you to practice in a safe place and hear honest feedback in a way that is going to help you improve your messaging. And if you can't explain it to somebody outside of your field, then who's actually trying to help and actively listen, then how are you going to speak with the public, and how are you going to get funders for your projects, right? So Toastmasters is a huge help. And again, it's available online. There are online groups, and then there's also groups that meet in person.
Toastmasters, can you please drop the spelling in the chat, please? Toastmaster, I didn't get that. So is it a free online class or something? Is it free?
Toastmasters International is a nonprofit that's global. It's found in over 111 countries. It's not free, but sometimes there are student groups, and I don't know if those student groups at universities have discounts. I'm not sure, but trust me when I say it is well worth your time to do that.
Thank you so much. There is another question here. Is there a model for communicating science to the public? I mean, are there any cardinal points to focus on during such communication?
I mean, it depends on what you want to communicate with the public. The whole book, or the entire middle section of the book, is about how to communicate with folks from the public. I guess it depends on if you're speaking with a journalist. Are you speaking with a mother who's concerned about their health of their child? Maybe if you can just explain your question a little bit more, and I'll be able to answer it more thoroughly.
Dr. Durosharo said he loves your method. He loves your method of convincing the world about science. Once you are able to talk to children and make them understand what you're saying, then you're sure that the public will understand what the message you're trying to pass across. So if you have questions, please, we still have a few minutes for Deborah. Kindly drop your questions in the chat box, or if you want to make your comment, you can indicate by raise of hand, and I will unmute you. We have just 5 minutes to do that, please, before we move to the second speaker.
I remember, oh, sorry. I was just going to share a short story. I think I mentioned it in the book, but I remember sitting at a convocation at a graduation ceremony at a prestigious university. One of my friends was graduating there, and I was in the audience, and I was listening to all of the thesis titles. And I was thinking, holy moly, what on earth were they studying? I mean, sure, it was physics, and I'm not a physicist, but still, it just made you think, how are you going to explain this to somebody outside of your niche knowledge, right? I think I see another question there.
I think he's trying to explain the first question he dropped, asking still about, is there a model for communicating science to the public? What he means is that, are there any cardinal points to focus on during such communication? Or probably what is the most important thing to focus on when you want to communicate to the public?
And I guess my other question is, if you're in an environment where the public speaks back to you, or if you're just going to be writing in a newspaper that you can't hear the response. Do you see what I mean? There are different techniques, and both techniques are written in the book, but it depends on what you're asking. If you're asking how to speak with a group, and the group is live in front of you, then you have to get them to nod their head, say that's right, be in agreement, and engage, invite them to engage in a conversation. Make yourself feel relatable. That's by far the most important thing. Because if you are relatable and you represent science, then science is relatable. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I think Dr. Said, if you need to explain further, you can please indicate so I can unmute you so that you get your question answered properly. Or I don't know if she has answered your question, but if you think there is still, you still need her to explain further, or she hasn't answered the question in the way you are, okay, let's just have you talk. Please unmute so it becomes easier when you talk together. Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go on. Yes.
All right, thank you very much for this opportunity. Now, what I'm trying to refer to is that I actually took a science communication course sometimes back. And I think in that course, they tried to, I can't remember very well, but they tried to create a kind of model in a diagrammatic form where they reason, for example, so what? Like, why are you doing this science? You know, you don't have to tell your audience all the introduction of your work, but you probably need to justify why that work needs to be done. Then probably they may not be interested in your method, but the findings you come up with, why is it important for them to know about the findings? What are the actions you expect them to come up with? That's what I'm trying to refer to.
Okay. Yeah. So when it comes to diagnostic model, I mean, we're all researchers here, we're all scientists. So I totally understand your question now. Thank you very much for unmuting and explaining. I think we're always working with models, right? I totally understand that. I would say, number one, when it comes to communication, it's an art. It's an absolute art. That's why I called this the art of science communication. So one model is going to work well with one group. It's going to be a disaster for another group. So remember how I said active listening was the very first step? You have to know your audience, and you have to know what method of communication to use for whichever audience. So that's number one. Number two, it is always a good idea to have your ask, have your most important statement said at the very first moment you are speaking. You want funding for X research, say, I'm here to speak about this research and we need funding. Do you see what I mean? Say what you want in the first 5 seconds, because that's all the attention that they're able to give you in a realistic manner. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it's okay with it. I think it's okay now. Thank you so much for that. Let me ask you this one quick last question. Have you ever been in a situation where you were trying to make people understand something and you realized that the approach you were using wasn't working at all.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to talk about
I mean, absolutely, right? You speak enough and you're going to see everything and anything. And just like you practice enough medicine and you're going to see a lot of different things. Or you do research and you work with a lot of different people, right? That's just the way life goes. But sometimes when I'll take this for instance, when I'm trying to explain antimicrobial resistance to a client, to a pet owner in the animal hospital, and I'm trying to explain that it's really important to have that recheck appointment so that I can know if I need to continue the antibiotic or I need to stop the antibiotic. I need to make sure that the infection is no longer present. But of course, there is money involved there, because to have a recheck appointment means they have to pay for a recheck appointment, and they have to go out of their way to come into the hospital with their animal. Sometimes it's hard to catch their animal. So I understand that there's a lot of effort to go into a recheck appointment, for instance. But by explaining that I understand it's a lot to come back here, right? It's a lot of effort to come back here. I understand, but this is the reason why it's important. And at the time of checking out from your clinic, make sure that the front desk figures out when the owner and the pet can come back in for the recheck appointment. That's the best way to go around it. So what I'm trying to say is, in that particular situation, number one, express empathy. You understand why it's difficult to come back. Number two, explain why it is important to come back. And number three, have them already sign up in their schedule the time to come back. So hopefully that'll help you.
Thank you so much. Deborah, we still have some questions coming in, but because of our time, I don't know if you'll still be around till the end of the meeting. So maybe if we have more time at the end, we can go on with the question.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much for the questions from the participants. I really appreciate this. And thank you, Deborah, for the wonderful presentation. Now I would like to introduce our second speaker, who is Mr. Bayo Moses. Mr. Bayo Moses has been a developmental editor for over 8 years. He is the founder and book strategist at Madda Book Media Limited, which is an independent publishing outfit that organizes stories and idea strategies to effectively help experts and leaders write and publish a high-impact nonfiction book for results, new ROI, and opportunities. The Madda Book Media has successfully helped 100+ first-time authors achieve their publishing dreams. Madda currently has imprints in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Eastern Africa, and is constantly expanding. Join me in welcoming Mr. Bayo Moses.
Hello, good evening, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you very much to everyone for joining. Thank you so much to Dr. Deborah Thomson, who just finished speaking. It was really an amazing session, by the way. I would say that half of everything I came to share today, she has already touched on them in very, very amazing ways. I mean, she's quite the communicator, as you all have experienced. So I'm just going to dive in straight into my presentation because we don't have a lot of time. And I want to be able to help a lot of people who are connected or who are joining us today. I want to be able to help a lot of people understand the value of your research work to more people out there. I mean, the value of taking your research work beyond the academic world, right? So one of the things I'm going to start by saying is that if you want to get more people to see your research, you want to get more people to learn your research, to learn the great insights that you've been able to come across in the process of research or doing your job, you have to be able to think outside of your research. You have to be able to think beyond your research. So it's kind of like saying, think outside the box. Only this time your research is not really a box, I would say, but think of it as a box for our purposes here, so that we can try and create something. Excuse me. All right, thank you very much. So welcome to this nonfiction book session. And like I said before, I'm going to be helping you to reimagine your message, your research, your findings, so that you can also communicate it to more and more people out there, the general public, people who probably didn't even go to college, people who have never been to, maybe they never went beyond the secondary or primary education, right? So the first step is for you to believe that this is a possibility. You have to believe that this is a possibility. You can do this if you set your mind to it. And I'm going to help you with some tools, some tips, and some ideas on how you can set your mind to this and how you can get it to work. So the previous speaker has already done a big part of my work today. She has already gotten everyone to introduce themselves. I appreciate that a lot. So I'm not going to go over that again. We're just going to dive in straight up because of our time, and so that we'll be able to have more time to ask questions, right? All right. So here we go. Let's talk about thinking beyond your research. One of the things you need to know is that there are more people that you can influence and that you can impact if you just step out of your academic community, right? Your immediate academic community. And like most of us have probably experienced, academic writing, maybe when you start in primary school, you start by writing mostly to your teacher, maybe during exams, right? You start by writing to your teachers. You know, they make you write all these essays and then they score you. Now, over time, by your university, your master's or PhD level, you are so used to writing to people who are like ahead of you, above you, and you are so used to trying to impress them. You use all these big sounding words and all these many, you know, academic jargons. So when you decide that you want to put all your findings into a book, you're going to do a lot of work. And most of your work revolves around simplifying your message, simplifying your message. Take note of that word. Now, one of the things I'm sure most of us have noticed when Dr. Deborah read from her book, of course, you could see how that with a lot of experience that she has, she told us of her story, her experience from Congress to conferences, you know, to the classroom, to the clinic, you know, all of this many experience. How was she able to still simplify the message? How was she able to make sure that even a 6-year-old child can comprehend what she's trying to say, so that they can take action, important action? Because again, you have to understand that change is the most important thing when you're writing a book. You want to create a change. That is the most important goal in front of you, right? One form of change or the other. As a matter of fact, that could probably be the reason why you are doing your research. You want to discover something, you want to find something, or you want to communicate something that you found in order to create a certain form of change. But then, until people take action, you will not be able to achieve that change. That change will not come about. But then how can people take action except they understand with all clarity what they are supposed to do? So this is your task when you're trying to convert your research into a book. You have to simplify your message. You have to simplify to the very, very barest minimum. You know, I saw someone asking a question earlier: how do you convince editors or reviewers, you know, who don't see the reason why you should simplify your message? Maybe something like that. Now, if you're talking about editors, for example, in the context of nonfiction publishing, I would say that you shouldn't really struggle to convince everybody. It's not your job to convince everybody. You can't convince everybody. But then think about just like what Dr. Deborah did, as she told us. she rejected a lot of maybe applications, I'm sure, from editors or publishers who would advise her to break her book down into 3 different books, right? So I'm trying to say that you are you have absolute creative control. Take control of your process. You don't have to try to convince some editor because you need their permission. No. Rather, I would say instead of trying to convince some editors, maybe just find the people. Instead of convincing, just find the people who agree with your message, who also agree with the right voice that you feel that message should be passed. And how do you think beyond your research paper? Back to what's on the slide. I would say start with finding the human connection to all your research. Everything you have communicated, you have researched rather. I told you earlier that in academics, you try to write to your professors, you know, to maybe the Senate, the board. You know, those are people that are very smart. They spend a lot of years in academia, so they expect you to write at a certain level. But then when you want to write to the public, you want to convert all of that to people, you have to know that it's not about your research. Your book is not another research project. Don't treat it as another research project, and don't spend your time trying to define, don't over-define your book, right? You're trying to define, you're trying to postulate, you're trying to analyze. Don't do all of that. Just a great storytelling will just save you all of that stress in your book. I mean, that's what we do with in editing, by the way, some of us in editing. So find the human connection to all your research. Why? How? By asking the pertinent questions. Number 1, whom will this research benefit the most? These things that I found out, who stands to benefit the most? You understand? Look for that set of audience. You can call them your niche, for example, and then ask yourself, who needs to hear this to become a better person or to achieve something in their life, to move forward? What society or what group of people do I need to target? Which community do I need to address the most, right? And then another thing again is to understand that behind all that number, all the numbers that you are presenting, all the data, all the analysis you've made, behind all of that data presentation, behind all of that numbers, there is a story to every number. There is a story, right? So those numbers, I'm assuming they are people. They might also be animals or plants, like researchers see subjects, right? So behind all of those numbers are living beings, right? Find the story behind every one of them and find a way to tell it. Use it to inspire your reader. You know, your audience won't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. It means that it's not about how smart you are. It's not about how smart sounding you can. It's not about how sophisticated your language sounds. No, it's about helping the reader to move from one point to the other by simplifying your message. All right. So another thing again is to also understand that like I said earlier, your book is not another research. So don't approach your book like it's a research work. Step 1, introduction, then literature review, and then you're just quoting endless scholars. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Look for the stories that would inspire people. Look for the stories that will help people connect to the message, that will also inspire action, right? That's what you want to achieve with your book. So your book isn't about defending a point, unlike what you do in academia. It's about helping the reader find an answer. It's about helping people move to a better place, move to a higher level of understanding, right? So the audience is the reason for every decision you make. Take note of that. So just a little about me, like she has said, the host has said, Dr. Sheung, I am a developmental editor. I help people, especially first-time authors, write, publish, and market their book professionally. And I'm just going to move on to, okay, here are some of our works. And because of our time, I just want to touch something quickly here. Now, one of my most favorite quotes in publishing that I normally tell first-time authors all the time is, books are about change. Yeah, books are about change. You found something, it changed you. Now you want to share with the world so others can also change. It's all about changing humanity one reader at a time. That should be your focus. Change is the big picture. Change is the goal. Change is what you want to achieve. So if you're communicating your book or you're trying to write in a way that most people will not understand, maybe they will need to Google up the terms or look for maybe a dictionary, then you're not achieving your aim, you're not achieving your goal. Let me give you a quick example. I remember one time I was reading a research work, and then I wanted to, I saw a very, very long and big term, very big word. I wanted to understand what is this, what does it mean, so that I could, get more out of the piece I was reading. So I just went to the internet and then I just Googled it up. Guess what, guys? Now, the first result that came out, I think it was Wikipedia. Now they tried to define the word by using a much bigger word, even much more difficult word. So it's like saying that you want to define A, which I don't understand, but you are saying A can be defined as XYZ, and then I don't even know, I have no idea what XYZ means. So that is typical of how, that is a typical example of how most academic people tend to communicate. So one of the things you want to do is you need to focus on the big picture. The big picture is you want to help people change. You want to help people move to a better place. You want to help people transform. You want to be able to create that transformation, that journey for them, right? You want to be able to spark that journey for them. Now, in order to do this, like I said earlier, you need to bring them to a place of understanding. And then you need simplicity and clarity to achieve that. Because it is until they get to that place, they will not be able to take action. And without the action, change will not occur, right? So that thing you found, that insight that you found is what changed you, is what changed the people, your audience, maybe the few people you've coached or mentored or taught that idea to, right? So you want to say the same thing to a much larger crowd so that they can understand the same thing and they can move. And here are some of the components of a great book that will really, really help you to maybe communicate what you want to pass across. Here are some very important components to keep in mind. Number one is the story. I've talked about this earlier. Now, all great books are about change. And then the reader demand in nonfiction is transformation. The reader is constantly asking, can this book solve my problem regarding X? So it is your job to find out what that X is for the reader and then figure out a way to best present your message so that the reader can be able to find clarity and the next steps on how they can move from a certain point A to a better place, right? So another thing again that I would want you to really understand at this point is that keep asking why. That's one tip I'm going to give to you. Just keep asking why. This is one way you're going to figure out the story behind your data, because most times, even the best of data, they tell us the what and then the how, right? They tell us what the discovery is about and then how, kind of like the methodology, right? That's how you were able to find out that insight. But then until you figure out the why is this important? Why does this matter? Why is this relevant? Why do people need to hear this? Until you figure out the why, you will not be able to tell the story behind all of that vast, amazing data that you have discovered. The moment you're able to figure out the why and you do a good job of telling it to people in an interesting or engaging manner. Some people say, what does it mean to be engaging? It just means be relatable. That's just what it means. Engaging doesn't mean you have to be as good of a storyteller like Malcolm Gladwell, for example. You must not be so, I don't know. So you just need to be relatable. If people are able to read it, find meaning from it, connect with it, then you have done your job, all right? So storytelling is really very powerful and it's really important. The moment you bring story and data together, those are two powerfully convincing tools that can convince almost anybody. And then the next thing I want to talk about quickly is that story is not really, in book writing, unlike most people assume. Most people will tell you that stories is how we connect. If you want to connect to your readers, use storytelling. But I usually tell my authors that storytelling is not how you connect to your readers, actually. In reality, the goal of the storytelling is to help your readers rise with the courage, right, to act. That's the goal of storytelling. Now, how do you connect to your reader? That's where the word voice comes. That's where voice comes in. So the voice is about connecting to people. Now notice, storytelling is helping the reader move forward or take action, while voice is now establishing that connection. So the voice is like the tone you're using. So just assume that you're talking to a 6-year-old child. How do you need to best say what you want to say in a way that will convince them, in a way that they would understand it? So if you figure out that voice, or think about, like I tell people, think about, just assume that you're standing by the train station or at an airport and you're next to a stranger. You need to tell them something super important that is like going to maybe save them within the next couple minutes. Now, it is so important that you say it to them, but then you don't know them. They are a stranger. How will you best communicate it to them? Cut out all the unnecessary words, save time, go straight to the point, don't waste their time, be polite, say it the best way that they will be able to, relate with it. That's what you do, right? Now, if you can do that, all the rules that apply in communicating to strangers who need to hear what you have to say, because it is important to both you and them, all the rules that you would apply in order to achieve that are the same rules you would apply when writing your book. And that is the secret to finding the right voice. And then most times there's a reason why a lot of people falls over a lot of people are having a lot of issues with the famous, in quotes, finding your voice. Finding your voice. I think that's how they put it. Now, like I tell most authors, most first-time authors, don't sweat over finding your voice. A lot of people do it the wrong way. I'm trying to find my voice. I'm trying to find my voice. Your voice is not lost. It's not something you need to find. Instead, I would say, think about it as using your voice. Now, I know this may sound like a very tiny little difference, but then the moment you stop thinking about it as finding your voice, and then you start thinking about it as using your voice, so your attention shifts from you, because when you say finding your voice, the attention is about you, is on you. What do I need to do? How do I find my voice? But the moment you shift to using your voice, then you focus on the audience. So it's more like a mind shift, like how do I say this best to someone who needs to hear what I need to say? So that's how to use your voice. Now, another thing that can help you is to know that you can find your voice faster when you're talking to a real human being than when you're just writing on paper. So a lot of people spend long time trying to write, and then they delete that draft. They say, I want to start all over again. I've met a lot of authors who spend as many as 10 years trying to write just one book, and then when we meet them, and then maybe in 3 or 6 months, they're done and they're wondering. So one of the reasons is because of all of these problems around finding your voice. Well, I used to tell them, just use your voice. That's why I tell people, before you write anything on paper, test it with a real life audience. Look for somebody. If you want to coach people with your book on how to maybe plan their finances very well, how to maybe be more conscious in their environment. I'm trying to look for more science subjects to use as example. If you want to achieve that, you just need to look for people in real life that you can help with that solution. So what did you need to say to that person in real life? That's one of the strengths of Dr. Deborah's book. I mean, I haven't read it yet. I plan to, by the way, because it's so interesting. I can't just do without not getting a copy, So if you can find real life people, whether it's the classroom or at the clinic, maybe if you deal with patients or you deal with clients or so, find real life people who are struggling in the area that you want to provide a solution in. How were you able to help them? How were you able to get them to the place of clarity? How were you able to simplify the message? That is what using your voice really entails. So do that and transfer the exact same thing onto a book. That's how you create your first draft. As a matter of fact, that's how to create an authentic book, right? A book that is that's going to be very valuable. And then the next thing I want to talk about is the analytics. Now, most of us here are from science background, so I'm sure we're very, very conversant with the analytics. So the difference between the story and the analytics is that the analytics is about explaining the insights. Like you're trying to tell them the importance of what you're saying and why you're trying to get them to see the value of the message. But then story is about making them to act based on that message, right? And you're trying to help them overcome their fear. That's what you do in storytelling, because a lot of people may find the right answer, but they may be scared to act. So story is about getting them to the place of action, whereas analytics is about getting them to a place of enlightenment, get them to see the bigger picture, get them to understand something different, right? Get them to think differently. Whereas the voice is about connecting, and connecting is about establishing trust so that they see your credibility, they believe in what you're saying, and they are willing to learn more. All right, so now the next or the last component I want to share with you is application. Application is super, super important. Everything you want to say to the people, you have to make sure that you have corresponding steps that you're going to share with them to help them apply everything you have to say to them. An application is like the how-to section of the book. There has to be a set of steps, recommendations, next steps, advice. There has to just be something that they can act upon. That will make your book to become a part of their life. That will make your book to become a part of their story. When people talk about this book transformed me, it's because they were able to act based on the message. All right. Now, the next thing I want to share with us is how to execute your book. Now, in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to wrap up this part because I can understand that our time is fast spent. So, how to execute your book? Please drop your questions in the comment section. I am not able to read your chats right now that I am presenting, but I promise I will do justice to every one of them the moment I am done. Thank you very, very much. Now, how to execute your book quickly? First things first, the key to a successful book journey is not in the idea itself, right? Even though you need a very important idea to achieve what you want to achieve, the key is actually to find the right people for your message and story. And most people spend 10 years or 1 year or 3 years in the lab or in their office or in their bedroom, writing and writing and writing. And they make these mistakes all the time. After you've written, then you come on social media and you're trying to now make announcements and you're trying to get people to buy. It doesn't really work that way. As a matter of fact, like we tell people in audience, like we tell people in publishing, most times, first-time authors, don't write a book that you want your audience to read. Rather, write a book that your audience wants to read. That means draw close enough to your readers, whether it be by creating a community by which you can interact with them, connecting with them on social media, creating an email list, find a way to connect to real life people who the message matters to, real life people that would appreciate your book or all the things you're sharing the most. Find a way to connect to those people. Communicate with them, interact with them, find out what it is that they are going through by listening. It's important. When you meet such people, don't try to talk first. Don't try to go first. If you want to talk, you're just going to come up as the expert. And then what do people do to expert most times? They listen and then they nod and they're like, okay, and then they just move. And then, but most times when people see you kind of like as a friend, then they want to connect with you, and then they want to share, they want to open up. And that's how clarity comes actually. And with clarity, they're able to know the next steps. And with taking those steps, transformation comes, right? So you have to be able to listen to them. But to listen to them, you have to find them first. You have to connect with them. You have to be proactive in that. Now, when you connect with them, then you listen to them, you find out what are the things that they have already done previously to address this issue, so that you can figure out what are the patterns in their thought process, and then what is the best solution that you can give to them. You see, when you do this, you have more than enough stories and case studies to share in your book. So this is something that I'm going to also highlight. Dr. Sheon, that's the host of this event, this webinar, has done a very good job. This is her book, right? She has done a very good job. Her book is coming out in October, by the way. Go to the hand. She has done a very good job. Now, for more than 50 weeks before she came to us, she was already sharing her message and connecting with as many people as possible. Now, she was able to monitor the response of people. She was able to receive a lot of feedback. She was able to listen. She was able to observe. Now, it was actually in the process of doing that she figured out that she needed to simplify her message more. And then when she went ahead to do that in story format, and then she was able to connect to more people according to her story. And now she has a lot of people who are waiting to hear and read her book on the day that it releases. Are you with me? So I've had a very wonderful experience editing her book and working with her throughout her book journey. I've had a very wonderful experience. We had so much feedback to review from different people, and that makes the journey worthwhile. A lot of people ask me, how do I sustain inspiration? How do I stay motivated when I'm writing my book? Well, I say that if you have real life people that you are supporting, that you are helping, they are your biggest source of inspiration. If you feel like quitting, and then you think about the people who need it the most, the people whose life are going to become better just because they read and implemented your book, then I think you're going to get inspired. I mean, that would inspire me, and I've seen it inspire a lot of people. So the best way to beat writer's block is to connect to people, because you can always ask yourself at each point in time, what do I need to say to this person? If I was talking to so-and-so person, what do I need to say to them that will get them to a place of understanding about what I want to say? And then if you can figure out that quickly, then you will be able to know what to write. That's how you beat writer's block. That's how you make your book relatable. And that's how you get your book to as many people as possible. Now, quickly, how to execute your book in 3 steps. Number 1 is outline. This should take you about 24 hours. 24 hours tops. The reason is because we assume that if you're doing your book rightly, we assume that it's something you know about, you're an expert at. So it's not something you just found on Google and you just felt like, okay, maybe I could write something about this. No, it's something you've already been talking about. It's something you've been practicing with. It's something you've been into for a long time. So it should be easy to outline. All you just need to ask yourself all over again, like I've said, is what are the steps that I used to help most of my audience? How was I able to get the message across to the people whom I've helped with it before, right? So if you're able to figure out that, that is your outline. For example, what are the most important questions that people have asked me over the time, anytime I want to bring this up? So if you can figure out those questions, then you can use it to create your outline. Now, we don't have all the time. I would have walked us through how to create outline, but I'm sure you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Bayo Moses is the name. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I will be able to send you some amazing tips on how to do that. And then you can go to maddabookmedia.com. That's our website, maddabookmedia.com, to the blog section, and then you can find maybe guides and useful tips on how to do this. So your outline is the most critical authoring tool that you need, because it is your clarity tool. It's also what guides your entire execution. It helps you beat stalling. Every day you have a structure, you have what you need to do, and then you have a timeline to, right? Then the next thing after outlining is just go ahead and write. This should take you about 3 months to come up with the first draft. Writing a first draft is not about coming up with a perfect write-up. Some people get stuck on, I want to make this perfect enough. I want to make this perfect enough. No, forget about that. Don't do that in the first draft. You have plenty of time during the editing to do that, right? That's why we call it the shitty first draft. Pardon my use of words, right? SFT. SFT just means shitty first draft. It means that it doesn't need to be perfect. Just go ahead and bring content out of it. That's the most important. It's like when you are vomiting. Nobody cares how they look when they're vomiting. So just vomit it, just get it out of your mind. The moment you're able to do that, you will have enough things written down on paper for you to work on. Because you see, you cannot edit a blank page, but you can always edit a bad page, right? That is the reason why you need to focus on writing quickly as possible. Don't get stuck trying to write a perfect draft. You will never be able to write a perfect draft. All the great authors that you admire, none of them had a perfect draft from the beginning. Everybody started from the first draft, which is always shitty and it's not great. All right, the next is editing. Editing, you can revise and self-edit. You can to improve the readability. Always focus when you want to edit. The most important question in your mind is, what does the reader need to hear in order to change, in order to transform, in order to take steps, in order to understand, in order to get clarity, in order to move forward? That's the question you are asking for every sentence, every word, every paragraph, every page. That's what you're trying to do. And the moment you figure that out, cut out everything that is excessive, no matter how important it may seem to you. Your book is not about you. It's not about presenting your research. It's not about showing how smart you are. That's why you don't see in all of these 3 steps, you don't see research. I tell most first-time authors, you don't need to do much research to write your book. If it's something you've been practicing in for years, if it's something you've been teaching people, if it's something you've helped others with, you have more than enough that it takes to actually write a book. You have more than enough. You have more than enough. So most times research will stall you. Research will make you feel like you don't know enough because you're going to see other people who are way smarter than you. Research will also affect the voice of your book because you're going to get stuck on trying to, do all of these academia jargons and all of that. But then if you focus on just connecting to someone through the written page, you would know what to write. You would be able to write a meaningful message. I was surprised when Dr. Deborah mentioned how many, the page count for her book. I was expecting she was going to, when I saw the book cover, I was expecting she was going to see maybe 350 pages. You don't need to write a very, very long and voluminous thing. You just need to focus on what do people need to see? What do they need to read quickly? Get to the message on time, get clarity, and move on. That's what you need to focus on. That's what editing is about. Another big recommendation is get a friend to give you feedback. Get people to read the draft and let them give you as much feedback as possible. This is one thing that I admire about Dr. Shion's book writing process. She was so open to feedback, always, always open to feedback. She'll send it to many people and then she'll get back to me that people are saying this. And like we always do, most times we go with what the audience is saying because the book is not for us, the book is for them. And if they say, this is what helps me the most, then we need to focus and hone in on that. And then you can also work with an editor. Yeah, that's a very big tip right there. So I want to just encourage you by letting you know that you got this. You can do this. Many authors before you have been able to achieve this. Some people did not have your PhD or master's degree and they were able to write a great book. I'm sure you got this. I'm sure you can do it. So this is just an encouragement. Believe, that's the first step. Believe that it's possible. Open your mind to possibilities. And these are just examples of some of the works that we've done previously. These are some of the people that we've helped. And I just want to spotlight this quickly as I round up this session. Now, the Startup Youth, as you can see this cover on the screen, I just want to highlight this quickly. This author recently turned, I think 2 weeks ago, he turned 23. Now he's just a graduate and he just finished his National Youth Service Corps. And he was actually an intern when he wrote the book. Now he just asked, I don't want to go, maybe because of time, I don't want to go into how he came about the idea. But I'm just trying to say essentially that you can do this. If he can do this, you can do this, all right? Thank you very much. The very last page. Okay, we can do this together. This is my contact information if you want to reach out. Thank you very much. And I hope I didn't take much of your time. Thank you very much, Dr. Shion. I'm going to go ahead and mute right now so that we can take questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bayo Moses, for your wonderful presentation. And what I really got interesting about this was that just vomit that idea into the first draft. You don't have to make it perfect at the initial stage. But I want to ask you this question. Do you believe people still read books? I've heard a lot of people say, oh, if you want to hide an idea or something, just put it in a book. But do you believe people still read books? Please unmute. Please unmute.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, that's a very beautiful question. And that's a question people keep asking. I think that people read more than ever before. actually, there's a lot of data to go with that. People read more than ever before. The question is not if they read books. The question is, what are people interested in reading? So now, there was a previous generation or the previous time in the past where that adage was invented. Want to hide something valuable, maybe put it in a book. That was back in the day where books were mostly boring and they were written to target the elite, right? But nowadays, books are written in a much more simplified and enjoyable manner to target the general public. So I would say people are more than ever before interested in reading. The question is just about what do they want to read?
Oh, that is amazing. Dr. Deborah, please, I would like to have you online again, just to finalize this discussion. I want to know about your idea or your experience concerning your book. How did you find it? Was it encouraging the way it was accepted by the people, or were you discouraged at the outcome after writing the book?
Thank you. So my process for writing the book is I wrote the book, about 95% of the book, in a course of 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow, that's good.
Because it was a brain dump. I had it all in my head. I just needed it on paper. So it was just bleh on paper. And then I put it away for 3 months. I didn't touch it. I didn't look at it. 3 months after, I looked at it again. I'm like, there's some good ideas here, but boy, do I need to rephrase some of these things.
Yeah.
After I rephrased what I needed to, then I had a bunch of my friends from all different parts of science, from all different parts of policy, look at the book, give me feedback. If they liked the book, I asked them if they could endorse it. So the first several pages of the book is all endorsements from people from all different backgrounds. And I couldn't believe, and I had an editor. I hired my own editor. I hired my own artist for the front cover. As you can see, it's very artistic. And I wanted it to show diversity. I wanted the focus to be on the audience itself. But now I'm getting feedback that it looks like a children's book because it is in a cartoon-like manner. So I need to have a second edition where I might have to make some edits. I can't believe how difficult it is to get the book out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I have put in there is meant for the world, and it has not caught on the way I want it.
Oh.
I know that maybe one person in this whole audience has read the book already. So, it's one of those things. It takes so much more energy to push the book out than to actually write it. And that really surprised me.
Wow.
Wow.
So
do you mind if I comment?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just going to say this from experience that you're very correct. You're very correct. It takes a lot more to market your book than it takes to actually write and produce it and all of that. Now, most times I would say that a lot of authors, when they start out writing their book, their main focus is usually publishing. So they don't start out with the initial goal or maybe with a well thought out plan on how to market their book. So I wouldn't say that happened in your case. I'm just saying what happens most times. So I would say that nowadays, the primary way for people to get to see your book is actually through your platform. Yes, every avenue that you have, you need to create buzz or word around your book. Find a way to connect to people who are already reading your book. Find a way to get more reviews from them. Find a way to get more people to see that review. Find a way to inspire them so that they can see, they can talk to more people. So I think community is the big secret here. Community. Get into more communities, target people who need it. And it might take a few months, it might take a few years, but eventually the right people will find the message and they'll run with it.
Yeah, thank you. I have a comment here for Mr. Bayo. This person is Abibat Atta. She said, thank you so much, Mr. Bayo. I felt like you were speaking directly to me because I have been meaning to write a book for years now, but haven't put down a word. So I hope you've inspired her, and this will go a long way. Just spit it out, just write it like the two of them have said, whatever format it comes to you. Let me give you this. There are times maybe you're the busy type, you're the career person, the 9-to-5 worker, and you may not have time to take the biro and pen to do extra things. But there are times you may be driving and this idea about writing something about the book comes into your mind. I'll just give you what I have done that really helped me, within the shortest period of time to get it done. I have this app on my phone, which is called the Author app. When I speak and it writes, it types it. So while I'm driving or in a busy place or maybe working to the office, so instead of wasting that time just working, I just keep telling my stories using the app, and it gets typed on my phone. So when I get home or a convenient place, I just copy it, download it, edit it a bit, and keep it there. So at least that will save you the time and the energy. And in any place you are, maybe you are in the train or in the bus, you can just quickly make some conversation, just type it and it gets saved somewhere. So there is this question: to keep a memory intact, put in writing, well, to keep her, sorry, I'm not sure I understand your question, Nasiruddin Abdul Rashid. I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to say.
I think it's not a question, it was more of a comment.
A comment, okay. So there's a question from Victor Yeniro. Does a first-time author need to set deadline when writing?
Yes, I would say you need to set deadline. And the reason why we normally recommend that is because we've come across a lot of people, like I said, who try to write their book and they spend many, many years, right? And they are not even able to do it. So set deadlines. That's why the outlines also go with deadlines. I'm going to do a chapter a week, or I'm going to do a chapter in 2-3 days. So it is very important to set deadlines. It will help you, be structured. It's really important.
It's the speakers, Mr. Bayo Moses, Dr. Deborah Thomson, the participants, Dr. Said Jimo, Mr. Vincent from the UK. Yeah, thank you for joining. Sharifuddin Abdul Salam, you're welcome. Dr. Bukola Majeko Dumi, she's a colleague in Nigeria. Habibat Atta Fasan, Hamed, Victor Oyenirom, thank you for joining. And Kafiyat Hussein, Samuel Durosharo is joining from the US, Abu Aviz, Olamide, Olufumilayo Adetola Victoria, Nasiruddin, Abdul Rashid, thank you. Dr. Ife, Oluwapo Akombi, Abdul Rahman, he's joining from Ghana, thank you. Lundo Valundo, I don't know. Thank you, everybody. Karim Yusuf and Oluwatosin. So do you have any comments? Is there anybody that wants to share something or ask a last question before we wrap up today's meeting? So please feel free to, let's try to follow ourselves on LinkedIn. As researchers, I think one of the most important things is we need visibility. Even if you want to, after writing your book, you need people to know you for who you are and what message you have to pass across. You need to create that audience like Mr. Bayo said, and you can do that very well on LinkedIn. Please try to maximize the opportunity. I got to know Deborah Thomson on LinkedIn, and Mr. Bayo too, we met on LinkedIn. Please, so thank you very much, everybody. At this point, I would like to say we've come to the end of the meeting.